Hi, my name is Alister Chapman, and in this video we're going to take a look at the initial setup of this camera, the PXW-FS7. Now the first thing you need to consider is the frame rate that you're going to shoot at, and your choices are 24, 25, 29.97, 50 and 59.94 frames per second. Now there are other high-speed frame rates as well, but we'll go into those in a separate video. But your main frame rates are those. They're broken down into two groups. One group is under the PAL country settings, and those are the frame rates of 25 and 50 frames per second, and the others are under the NTSC country settings, and those frame rates are 24, 29.97, perhaps more commonly known as 30 frames per second, and 59.94, which is also more commonly known as 60 frames per second. Now to set the frame rate, first of all you have to choose the appropriate country area. So in the menu we go to the system settings, then under the system settings we go to country, and then we choose either NTSC or PAL area depending on the frame rate that you want. Now once you've chosen your base frame rate, the next thing you need to decide on is which shooting mode you're going to use with this camera, as there are two different modes. There is custom mode, where the camera behaves much like any other conventional video camera, where what you see in the viewfinder is what's recorded on the cards. And for most people, this will be the simplest and easiest way to work. The other mode is called Cine EI, and in this mode the camera mimics a film camera. This results in a flat, low contrast looking picture, but a picture that does contain a lot of information. You take this image into post-production and you grade it, you treat it, you color correct it, and you increase the contrast of the picture in post-production. It's a more complicated workflow, a more sophisticated workflow, and quite possibly what you are seeing in the viewfinder while you are shooting is a little different to how the footage will end up at the end of the production process. So Cine EI mode is more suited to more advanced users of this camera. To choose the appropriate mode, we go to the system menu, we go to base settings, and we choose either custom mode or Cine EI mode. There will be more information about Cine EI and custom modes in separate videos. Now the next thing you need to decide on and to set is which codec you're going to use to record with. The standard camera has three codecs built in, which are MPEG HD 422, XAVC-L and XAVC-I. If you have the optional XDCAM-FS7 extension unit, you also gain the ability to record using Apple's ProRes and Apple's ProRes HQ internally onto the XQD cards. The XDCAM-FS7 also offers the option to record RAW to an external recorder, but we're not going to go into that just here at this point. So the first one to look at is MPEG HD 422. It's MPEG 2, it's 8-bit, 422 and HD only. So you can only use this for HD. You can't shoot slow motion with this codec. XAVC-I is a great high quality all-round general purpose codec. It's 10-bit 422 in HD and in 4K and offers really good picture quality in a fairly small file size. XAVC-L is what we call a long-op codec, so it's more efficient than XAVC-I because of the way the frames are recorded. But that efficiency comes at a price, and that is that in post-production and in editing it requires more processing power to handle. So you're going to need a really good computer to work with XAVC-L. But because it's more efficient, XAVC-L only takes a quarter of the space on your recording media compared to XAVC. It's also worth noting that XAVC-L is only 8-bit in 4K, so it doesn't quite deliver the same level of image quality as XAVC-I. My recommendation here is to choose XAVC-I unless you are really short on storage space on your cards, in which case you may want to use XAVC-L. Now if you have the XDCAM-FS7, then you also have the option to record in Apple ProRes or ProRes HQ. The ProRes and ProRes HQ files will be larger than the XAVC-I or XAVC-L files. The codec is not as efficient, but it is very high quality, it is 10-bit, and it's 422. The HQ version is higher quality than the regular ProRes version, but the file sizes are larger. Most people working on professional productions will use ProRes HQ rather than regular ProRes. To select the codec, we go to the System settings, to the Codec page, and choose the appropriate codec. Remember, if you want to do slow motion or any effects, you need to choose either XAVC-I or XAVC-L. So now you've chosen and set the codec, you now need to set the recording format. Now there are 4 different frame size options available, but the options that you get will depend on the codec that you've chosen. For example, if you've chosen MPEG HD 422, this is an HD only codec, so you have the choice of 2 frame sizes, and those are 1920 by 1080 Full HD or 1280 by 720p HD. If you've chosen XAVC-I, you can shoot in 1920 by 1080 HD, 3840 by 2160 UHD or Quad HD, this is the 4K standard that most television sets comply to, or full 4K, which is 4096 by 2160. It's worth noting that 4096 by 2160 is a very slightly wider aspect ratio than the normal 16 by 9 aspect ratio used for television. So if you're converting from 4096 by 2160 to HD, you're either going to have to letterbox the picture with black bars top and bottom, or crop the edges off just a little bit. So for most productions that are going to go on TV, I recommend 3840 by 2160. If you've chosen XAVC-L as your codec, then you can choose between HD or Quad HD. As well as being able to choose the different frame sizes, you can also choose different bit rates for the HD recordings. The last 2 digits of the format description are the bit rate, either 25, 35 or 50 megabits per second. I recommend that you use 35 megabits per second for general production work in HD and 50 megabits per second for the best possible image quality in HD. So that's your video settings set. The next thing to think about is audio. Now the camera has the ability to record up to 4 channels of audio. As it comes from the factory, it only has 2 audio inputs here on the side of the camera. But it is worth noting that there is actually a little additional microphone just here on the body that you can use for recording ambient sounds. And one of the things I recommend to have set is, if we go to the audio menu, is to set channel 3 to internal mic and then set the channel 3 level to auto so that the levels are set automatically. Now if you wish, you can set the levels manually, but I find for this little microphone on the side of the camera body, the auto settings work very well. In terms of channels 1 and channels 2, well, the input type and input gain are set here with these switches on the side of the camera body. If we're using an external microphone, we set this to mic. If the microphone requires external power, sometimes called phantom power, then we would set this to mic plus 48. If we're feeding a feed from an audio desk at a concert or something like that, or a live event, then we might need to use the line level input setting. Once you've chosen the correct mic input settings, under this flap, we have our audio settings where we choose between auto gain and manual gain, and then we have a manual volume control. And normally, if you're using the manual setting, you'll want to see the audio levels peaking to around about 80% of the way up the scale. If they're hitting the red part of the audio scale, then your audio will be clipping and distorting. It should be below that red level.